I'm sorry, I lied. This is really like 22 minutes, not 12 or 15 like I originally said. All right, let's get into it.
Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
I am your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. This is probably going to be a quicker podcast. It's probably going to be around 10 minutes or so. A nice, perfect, digestible podcast for an average commute. But you're saying my commute is 30 minutes. Well, you can listen to a 15-minute podcast in 30 minutes. Well, my commute is 9 minutes. Well, save the last 3 or 4 minutes for lunchtime. Or just play it. Your boss isn't going to care. Your boss likes Geek Therapy Radio, I promise. Yeah, anyways, I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. Just quick reminder here that this weekend, this Saturday, is going to be the first live Geek Therapy Radio, the first live broadcast on KPRC 950 AM. So tune your radios to KPRC 950 AM if you're in Houston on Saturday, the 2nd, March 2nd, and call in 713-212-5950, 713-212-5950. So that's 10 p.m. Central Time. So for anybody listening elsewhere in the country, if you're listening to Geek Therapy Radio on the iHeartRadio app, you can ask Alexa to play KPRC 950 on iHeartRadio. She'll do that. You can ask Google to do it and say, okay, Google, play KPRC 950 on iHeartRadio. She'll do that. So if you're listening to Geek Therapy Radio live at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Mountain Time, 10 p.m. Central Time, or 11 p.m. Eastern Time, you can still call 713-212-5950. That is this Saturday. Call in and we'll talk about whatever you're a geek about. Who knows what we're going to talk about? That's what's so fun about doing live radio. You can call in and we can talk about anything. But I prefer if we talked about your hobbies, your passions. Call in to talk about Star Wars or Pokemon or wrestling or whatever you're into. Let's get into it. First live episode or first live broadcast of I can't talk. I'm looking at so many things right now. First live broadcast of Geek Therapy Radio is 10 p.m. Central Time this Sunday on KPRC 950 AM in Houston. 713-212-5950. Call at that time. Let's talk about your geek thing. Okay, as I say, on to the meat and potatoes of this week's Midweek Geek podcast. So, as you know, I don't like to get too political on Geek Therapy Radio. That is not in the mission statement of the show. Actually, the mission statement of the show is that we're all geeks about something. So whether you're Republican, Democrat, whatever you are, we all love Star Wars and Star Trek and classic cars and music and painting and sewing and tinkering on things, whatever it is. So I don't like to get too political on here, even though I have come very close, if not dip my toes in the water maybe once or twice. And like I mentioned, if I do that before I go into it and during those diatribes, I will let you know that it is completely an editorial, that it's completely an opinion, that your opinion is completely valid, even if it flies in the face of my opinion, if I even dabble in politics. I have nothing against politics. It's just not what I want Geek Therapy Radio to be about. You get plenty of politics elsewhere on the radio and in the media. That's not what I'm about. I'm the oasis in the desert of politics. Now, that being said, there is something that has transpired over the past few weeks that does, in a way, encroach upon the scope of Geek Therapy Radio, and that is the Green New Deal. Now, let me just set this up in that, for those of you who don't realize, the Green New Deal is a bill that the Democrats want to push that, in a nutshell, would aim to eliminate fossil fuels, in a short amount of time, retrofit existing houses to be solar panels, add thermal energy and wind energy and all the renewable energy. So there's parts of the Green New Deal that I agree with just in spirit. Like, I'm all for electric cars because electric cars are really cool. Of course I want a Tesla. Of course I want an Audi e-tron. Electric cars are really cool. So there's parts of it that I like. Solar panels, I like that. I'm not commenting on the policy of how we would roll out such a thing. I disagree with the Green New Deal on a number of different policies and logistics. But I'm all for an more efficient future. So if I'm commuting to work all day, or if I'm commuting to work every single day, I'm perfectly fine with that commute being in an electric car, autonomous electric vehicle. I don't care. I would prefer it. There's no reason to waste, fossil fuels or burn anything if we don't have to for something as mundane as a commute. So I understand that aspect. I can get behind that idea. Where it rubs me the wrong way, well, I should frame it like this. Initially, I had the thought, and you may realize this from listening to Geek Therapy Radio, is that how would the Green New Deal, because no one's talked about it other than me as far as I know, how would the Green New Deal impact something like classic cars? Since a lot of us have classic cars, I myself have a 1983 DeLorean, you may have an old Mustang, an old Chevy, whatever you have. You may have an old 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-old fire breather. So how would the Green New Deal and how is this green, electric future going to affect our geek passion of classic cars? And what sparked the idea for this specific podcast is that I uploaded a link the other week to the Buzz's Facebook page addressing my initial thoughts on the Green New Deal and its impact on classic cars. And basically, the question I raised is this: should classic cars rot away as casualties of progress in the wake of a green electric future? And somebody responded to that question with, yes, they should be casualties of progress. Let's throw classic cars away. They don't deserve to be here. They're polluting. They're ancient. Yes, in the name of progress, let's get rid of classic cars. We don't need to keep them around. They should be casualties of change. So that's what sparked this specific Midweek Geek, is addressing that notion. And I'm going to bring it all around to make it make sense for a lot of other areas of life, not just, people who are into classic cars specifically. So I didn't respond on Facebook there because we're just not allowed to, as official iHeart, under an official iHeart page. Like, I couldn't reply as, 94.5 The Buzz to this person's question. But I can respond to it here with my own personal thoughts from Johnny Hemberger. And that is this. I don't blame this person. I'm not mad at this person for having this idea, but I do want to interject a little bit of logic where I don't think this person and a lot of other people may be thinking along these lines. And that is this. Let's say someone does have an old 57 Corvette, like the first year. Was it 57 or 56? Either way, they've got a really old car that is not a hybrid and is not electric. The argument this person, I'll use for example, made was that car, this rolling work of art, this rolling museum piece that reaches across history to grace us with its presence and remind us of the past, to give us a clear vision for the future, this work of art should crumble to the ground and be destroyed because it burns fossil fuels and therefore it pollutes and it's not good for the environment. I strongly disagree with that sentiment. let's put logic in here. Logic is the great equalizer, I believe. Let's imagine that the person who made that Facebook comment in this instance, that old car, that old Corvette, should be a casualty of progress and should just be destroyed and rust away, never to be driven again because it's polluting. Let's assume that person, just assuming, I'm not saying that this person does, but for sake of argument, let's just assume that person drives a Prius or a hybrid or something extremely fuel efficient. Let's say they drive a modern electric car, for that matter, a Tesla. If they do drive a Tesla, the carbon footprint from producing that Tesla will far outdo any future carbon footprint from this old car. That is, that this old car will not make a dent in the environment the way that a new Tesla would from its production process and from the mining of the raw lithium, raw materials, and all the pollution that goes into producing a Tesla electric vehicle, specifically the lithium batteries in that vehicle. That old Corvette is not going to do as much damage to the environment now as producing that Tesla will. Let's move on to a hybrid. Let's say that this person drives around in a Prius. Let's say they drive this Prius for 200,000 miles. That Prius, even though it's an electric gasoline hybrid, will do immensely, unimaginably more damage to the environment than that old Corvette will. Let's say they drive a fuel-efficient Toyota Corolla or something. Very, very 40 miles a gallon, very sippy car. S-I-P-P-Y, sipping the gas, very fuel efficient. That car, driving that for 200,000 miles, and I realize that no one's going to drive their car 200,000 miles, or maybe way less people will. But the point is, over the lifetime of that car, let's say 150,000 miles. That's more reasonable, I think, 120,000 miles. Even over 120,000 miles, the carbon footprint that's going to leave behind from burning fossil fuels is still an order of magnitude, just inconceivably more than that old classic car will ever do in its future. Ever. Here's why that makes sense. Here's what I'm getting at. That Prius over its lifetime, let's say from 2019 to 2029, that Prius is going to burn thousands upon thousands of gallons of gasoline and run through however many gallons of oil, every oil change. It is going to have such a great impact on the environment versus that old classic car. Even that old V8 that gets 10 miles to the gallon. The Prius over the course of 10 years is going to be so much more destructive to the environment than that old V8 10 mile per gallon fire breather will be over the same amount of time. Why is that? Because if you own a classic car, you are not going to be putting 150,000 miles on it over the course of 10 years. Over the course of 10 years, you will probably put 1,500 miles. You will put a tenth, a hundredth, or whatever, the amount of miles on your classic car that you'll put on that Prius. So over that course of 10 years, that old Corvette, whatever puts out its tailpipe will not even be measurable on the grand scale. There is however many tons of CO2 or whatever, it's literally going to be an eyedropper in the ocean. Just a drop of water in the ocean. It will not be detectable. There is not a machine sensitive enough that would detect how much you ran that old classic car. That will detect, running that classic car for 1,500 miles. You can detect, arguably, 150,000 miles on a Prius. That's a lot of CO2 you're pumping out. That's a lot of damage you're doing. So we've established that classic cars will not pollute the environment. They are not polluting the way that some quote unquote, as I say, greenie weenies, and I mean that in kind of a loving way, believe. An old 1965 Ford pickup truck chugging down the road. Over the next 10 years, whatever car, your modern vehicle you're in right now will do way more damage than that old classic pickup truck. Way more. So I don't think, quote unquote, greenie weenies are thinking it all the way through when they say things like classic cars should be casualties and discarded as casualties of change, of progress in the green future, because those classic cars will not do the amount of damage they think they will just at first glance. You know what? Neither will 1,000 horsepower supercars. You see all the time in comment sections of, Pagani creates this new 1,500 horsepower, whatever, V12 monster. And there are people typing, this is so wasteful. This hurts the environment so badly. Even that car is not going to do more than just a few thousand miles in its lifetime. And again, the Prius, the thing that's a hippie staple, that is the vision of peace and love in a green environment, is going to do so much more damage than even a Bugatti Veyron with 16 cylinders of fossil fuel burning. Because that Bugatti Veyron is going to, if we're going to do kind of a ratio here, it's going to use a thimble full of fuel versus that Prius that's going to take an entire barrel full of fuel. Just to kind of associate a little bit, down to scale. So I'll start wrapping this up because I said this was going to be a little short and it's wound up, as usual, going a little bit longer. How can I summarize this effectively? The damage of ignorance is done to innocent people simply trying to enjoy their lives ethically and responsibly. So that person who is an otherwise good person, who may have an electric car for his or her 90% use scenario for commuting and whatnot, but they have their beloved old Corvette sitting there that they barely ever use, doing no damage to anyone, doing no damage to the environment. But it brings that person so much joy that the electric car can't. Electric car is cool in its own way, don't get me wrong, but you can't fire it up and hear the burble of a small block V8. You just can't. Unless it's synthesized, which is stupid, but that's a whole different thing. So the thing to consider is this. The world is making progress, and we should make progress. There's no need for our transportation needs in the future. There's no need to burn fossil fuels in that capacity. We will have to for the next several decades. That's just, let's be real here too. The green future is going to be built on the back of fossil fuels. That's just a fact. But let's not take away someone's geek thing. Let's not take away the joy, maybe possibly the only bastion of joy in someone's life, because of your misconception that it hurts the environment. Apply logic to it and you see that it doesn't hurt the environment. At most, it's a symbol of American excess of the past. But a symbol of excess isn't excess. It is not doing damage. It's just a symbol. It's a reminder of where we came from and where we're going. But it's driven so lightly, so sparingly, so rarely that it does no damage at all to the environment. It impacts the future in zero way. So as we march towards a green future and progress, let's be careful of who we're hurting, the innocent people that we might hurt, the joy that we might take away from an otherwise responsible human being whose only joy is their old car. And here's where it all wraps around. Here's where it all ties together. My main outlook with politics isn't just the immediate policies that we enact. It's the precedent that they set. For instance, when Barack Obama said he has a pen and a paper and he'll use it, basically that he'll execute his executive orders, that he doesn't need approval for some things, he's just going to do it. Oh, I'm I'm not saying that whatever he was talking about it was necessarily a bad thing, but I'm all about the precedents it sets. The precedent of him saying, effectively, F you, I'll do what I want, basically sets the stage for the next person to say, well, this guy did it. He set the precedent that I can do it. So what's to stop him from doing it? It's all about setting the precedent. So if you set the precedent that you can take away someone's only joy in life because of a misconception that it pollutes worse than you think it does, because you haven't educated yourself on it, be careful. Because you may be an artist and you may have paints, oil paints, whatever, and someone may come along and say, that is oil-based, or that paint, even if it's water-based, that's destructive to the environment. You don't want it going down the drain. Who knows? Whatever your geek thing is, whatever your passion is, someone can come along and say that that does damage. Some uneducated person who hasn't thought it through can say that what your geek thing is, your hobby, does damage. And they can take it away from you just as easily as you took it away from them. And that's all I was getting at with all of this. If you took it away from them, it sets the precedent that they can take what you love away from you. So let's think about, let's put ourselves, not even just put ourselves in their shoes, but just educate ourselves about the things we want to change. Because it has impact. It can take joy from people. A lot of our hobbies may not be the best for the environment. RC cars? I don't know if you're still running nitro in your RC car or whatever. And it doesn't even have to do with fossil fuels or refining petroleum. It could be anything that's at somewhere down the line someone says that's not okay. There's things in our history from the 60s and 70s that was just completely okay. It was status quo to do all these things, but in the future now, it's horrible. We've learned that these certain actions and behaviors, it's not status quo, it's horrible. It does damage and hurts people. So who knows whether it's misguided or not? If your geek thing, if you sit in the camp of I want to take away someone's classic car because it pollutes, who knows what you're up to? That in 10 years, 20 years, tomorrow, someone decides ignorantly that what you're doing is offensive or it's not good or it's bothering somebody or bothering the environment, they'll take it away from you. So be careful of the precedents that we set. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening to the Midweek Geek this weekend. This is 22 minutes. It's fine. Remember, this weekend, March 2nd, Saturday, 10 p.m., KPRC 950 AM on the actual radio here in Houston or on the iHeartRadio app, whether it's on Alexa or Google or whatever, however you listen to the app. It's live. Geek Therapy Radio is live, March 2nd, 10 p.m. Central Time. So get the phone numbers ready. Get it saved. 713-212 5950. Save that number, 713-212-5950. Saturday, March 2nd, 10 p.m. Central Time. Call me up. Let's talk about your geek thing. I'm super stoked. Until then, take care, everybody. Enjoy your geek things. Who knows how long it's going to last? Maybe find another geek thing as a backup before someone comes and takes away your first geek thing. Don't take away someone else's geek thing because you're ignorant about it. Just be careful with all that stuff, and I'll see you in a few days on Geek Therapy Radio. Sup, Nico?
What's going on, Corey?
I'm not Corey.
Oh my god. I just saw Corey, so his name was on my brain, and he said that we're running UT basketball.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What's my name, though?
Your name is Johnny Hemberger, mental curator of Geek Therapy Radio.
Hell yeah.